Greetings. Welcome to this memorial service. I'm so pleased to be in the position of being able to speak to you about my dear friend Doyle, who is smiling from the picture on his thing. It's just a wonderful experience. My name is, let me say something here as a preliminary. We're going to have a number of speakers come up that are in your program, and I will try to emulate what I hope all of you who are speakers do when you come up here and stand in this position. My name is Gene Stringer. I was a good friend of Doyle for many years, mostly through our affiliation at church. It was Christian Church of Ashland at the corner of 2nd and B Streets in Ashland. Some of you know about that. We always like to say in Ashland, to be or not to be. Without question, it is to be. That's where you need to be. I'm scheduled to do a number of different things, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum so that we can recognize who we are here to celebrate, whose life we want to celebrate. But I would like to begin with a prayer. Father, I want to thank you for the privilege that I had of becoming a friend of your friend and brother or son in the faith, Doyle Cornwell. For so many years, we were privileged to work together and to do things, all kinds of things together, and it's a great pleasure to, with his wife and daughters, be here today with all of you to remember those things that were special in our interaction with Doyle. So we ask your blessing on our time together today, and just speak to us through this time of remembrance, and I pray this for your glory and honor in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, as I said, my name is Gene Stringer, and I have the first slot of remembrance on this program. That I did not arrange it. It's just the way it came out. Those people back there at that table told me what to do, and I'm trying to do it. But I did have one thing that I wanted to share with you that was very special for me and our family. Back in 1984, I had an opportunity to go to the Philippines for a year with our 4 children. From Janice, the youngest, 6 months old, and our oldest, Andy, who was getting ready to begin the 12th grade here at Phoenix High School after finishing grade 11. We left around June, right after school was out, and traveled to Manila. And when we got there, we discovered that the school year started almost immediately there. So he was supposed to be in grade 12. Slight problem. In the Philippines, school ends at grade 10. High school is the last grade you can go to in the Philippines is grade 10. He'd already done 10 and 11. So what are we going to do about my son Andrew's further education? I tried to get him into the university where I was on the faculty, visiting faculty member. No, can't do it. He has to have a high school diploma. But he couldn't get a high school diploma because he only finished grade 11. What will we do? Well, I happen to know this fellow that was on the Phoenix Talent School Board by the name of Doyle Cornwell. And I sent Doyle an email, and before I knew it, there in the mail was a preliminary graduation certificate for my son Andrew from Phoenix High School, pending completion of a few courses. The fine print they never read. They just wanted to see the big diploma. And so that's how it happened, that my son was able to not only go to college in the Philippines, but get credit for it, both for his first year of college and his last year of high school, all at the same time. That is the kind of guy Doyle is. He's a guy that is busy doing good things for others. And that's just one example of what you'll hear in the reports that we get today. That was mine. I have on my list here the next person that's going to do some remembering is Cass Cornwell. Cass, would you like to come up and tell them?
Not really.
And I'll hand you the microphone because this one gets out to the audience, but if you stay right here, it will also be recorded.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cass Cornwell, Doyle Cornwell's daughter. I feel so honored to be able to introduce myself that way. I feel lucky beyond words to have gotten to have a father who was a walking example of a selfless and caring human. When we were at our lowest right after he left, all of those who we cared for when he was here came and cared for us. They cried with us, they shopped for us, they cooked us dinner. And we are forever grateful for all of those people. There's no words to thank them enough. He may not have had monetary wealth to leave us, but I feel rich beyond belief to have been left his legacy of love. I remember being told that when I was born, I fit in one of his giant hands. When I was just starting to talk right before my second Christmas and Molly's first, I was mesmerized by all of the Christmas lights everywhere in town and on other people's houses. And so I'd say, lights, 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 everywhere we went. It was some of my first words. And so Dad painstakingly crawled all over our roof, risking life and limb, to put lights on our house so he could take me outside and show me our house and hear me say, lights, lights. And one year, probably 1983, on one of our spring break trips down to San Francisco, my mom usually read articles to us out of probably Women's Day magazine. And one of them was about laughing, keeping you younger. And she speculated, well, I wonder what part of what part of your body does it keep younger? So Molly's like, it's gotta be your tongue. So later we stopped for lunch in Monterey, this kind of semi-fancy restaurant. And Dad struck the conversation up again, like, look at that old lady over there laughing. I bet she's got the tongue of a 12-year-old. So we started laughing really loud and got a lot of dirty looks from other patrons and the waitstaff, and decided we better calm down before we get kicked out. And asked to go somewhere else to eat. But yeah, it wasn't Applebee's, but. And even though my dad often said cats are meant for living in the barn and catching mice, he fell in love with Ronnie the cat. I mean, we are talking best friends. Ronnie would give him back rubs. Ronnie would wait in his chair for him to get home from work. And he would say, I love you, Ronnie, whenever he had the chance. So know that he's with Ronnie again. And one more story, because I've got a lot of them, but I have to only think that my dad would have hundreds, so I'm going to keep it to 4. In August of 2018, he went to Asante ER to be treated for cellulitis. And a couple weeks later, we were sitting at dinner together, and he was, like usual, doing the pre-dinner prayer. And we'd gotten in the habit of piping up and throwing in prayers for friends and family that we knew could use a little support before he hit the amen. And so I heard him getting close to that point, so I decided to speak up and I said, please make sure to help Dad's cellulitis keep healing. And immediately he said, I'm okay, goodbye. I'm like, Dad, did you just hang up on God? He didn't even get to the amen, so I thought that's how you always need to call with God, but evidently not. I want to ask him a question and hear him say, I reckon. I want to listen to him read a list of corny jokes that someone sent him in an email that he printed out. I want to hear him read Casey at the Bat or The Man in the Arena while he puffs up with pride and unsuccessfully chokes back raw emotional tears. I want to work a crossword puzzle with him. I want to grill him a perfect steak. I want to just sit with him and be with him in silence. I want to share my life with him. I want him to hold me in his giant engulfing embrace and hear his voice say, everything's going to be okay. Dear Dad, I miss you so much. I think about you nearly every moment of the day. The deep heartache is somewhat eased by the feeling of your spirit near me. all the time. And knowing that you, or feeling that you are in a state of comfort and bliss. I hear your voice in my head when I talk to you. I see your smiling face in my mind. I picture you surrounded by all the loved ones who passed before you in a big blobby embrace of loving energy, celebrating being together again. The memories of my years on earth with you have been playing through my mind since you left. The long drives to Idaho for the family reunions in our 1969 Delta 88 Oldsmobile with 455 air conditioning, which is 4 windows down, 55 miles an hour. Rewatching old movies that you love and hearing you chuckle when you know what's about to happen. The way you endeared yourself to every person you met, young and old. And the way you've always cared for others more than yourself. The unfathomable number of lives you touched for the better and how many people you served in your lifetime. We love you and miss you, Dad. Talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Cass. You reminded me of something about, well, I got to beat some other people to the punch. What time is it when it's 2:30? Surely you know it's time to go to the dentist. 2:30. That's one of his favorite jokes. He wrote that one. And I've heard it several times. Okay, now we're coming to Molly. You're up next, Molly. Come on up.
Okay. Here we go.
This is so everyone can hear that this is going to be recorded.
Okay. First, I'm actually reading a letter from one of Doyle's former classmates from, it looks like back in grade school, Judy French Barnes. Anyway, she says, personal memories of a school classmate and longtime friend, Doyle Cornwell. Those of you attending today most certainly know Doyle to have been one of the most honest, genuine Christian men genuine Christian men one could have had the privilege of knowing. I was fortunate enough to have known him since starting first grade in Roswell, Idaho in 1947. Roswell was a small school with one each of 8 grades, so we were lucky enough to go through all 8 grades with the same classmates. The added bonus was attending 4 years of high school with those same classmates, and those from 3 other country schools consolidated into Parma High School. We had a nice 1-story brick building with a room for each grade and a large auditorium in Roswell, along with very good teachers. When we reached 8th grade, our teacher and school principal was Mr. Carl Kitchen, a man of many experiences who loved to share them with his class. After attending Boise Junior College, Mr. Kitchen had moved to Alaska and delivered mail on a dog sled to railroad construction workers, and then joined the U.S. Army, serving in the Air Corps in Italy, where he flew on 20 missions as a tail gunner. Our class learned much about life during that 8th grade year. Doyle, along with the rest of our class, was always remembered 1955 with Mr. Kitchen, as he made it fun and interesting. Mr. Kitchen decided we should put on a play, and everyone in the class was included. Doyle was the main character in Desperate Ambrose. I'll say he spoke about it often. We learned our parts, had music performed by classmates between acts with makeup and scenery. We did a performance for our local audience and then went on the road to the other 3 schools in our district with afternoon performances. For a group of 13-year-old country kids, it was a great learning experience. Entering Parma High School as a freshman in 1956 put us with a new group of classmates. As always, Doyle was active in sports, thespians, taking part in several plays, and all class activities. He always made friends easily and joined in whatever was going on, so he was very popular. He was elected student body president one senior year, our senior year. We were allowed to take a senior sneak and travel to a hot springs for a night of swimming, returning for breakfast at a nice hotel in Boise. I have never heard this story before. That was a surprise when I read that. Fortunate for me, I was asked to be Doyle's date for the senior prom. That I knew. Since our school days and our lives moved on, our class has always maintained contact with class reunions, and in recent years, an after 50 reunion for all classes out of school for 50 years. Doyle has always attended when possible, and our little group of Roswell classmates remained close and gathered several times. Doyle's a friend you don't forget, but always remember fondly as a special person who added much to your life's experiences. Love, Judy Barnes. He was actually the MC at one of those reunions, and there's a picture in there of him wearing something crazy on his head that is from that. So now I get to talk about my feelings. I don't even know where to start, because words, they are such a poor and insufficient medium to capture who he was and my feelings about him. When I got to introduce myself as Doyle's daughter, it felt like I cheated. It felt like I did not deserve that honor. It felt like he did all the hard work and I just showed up, his progeny, and got to have the benefit of such a lovely opinion of me before I even opened my mouth. And I will always remember the look of surprise and joy on people's face when I would introduce myself. Even now, here, I'm sure there's not a person in this room who doesn't smile when they think of my dad. And it's been my experience that that's just how life is. And I realize that's not necessarily true of everybody, but he was just so quietly humble and kind and giving and silly and joyful. And I remember I loved to make him laugh. And I would tell him something and I could see the anticipation on his face of, oh, this is gonna be good. And I'd get to the end and he would laugh and I could also see in his eyes he didn't get it. And he would still laugh anyway, because it was like, well, if she said it, it's gotta be good. And so I always appreciated that support and belief that I was always gonna deliver the goods. I did spend my childhood trying to understand his advice. When I was 7, I asked him what would happen if I swallowed a fish bone, because we were eating fish. And he said, well, it depends on what happens. And I said, yes, but what happens? And he said, I don't know, it depends. And I was 7, I wasn't ready for a philosophical discussion about what happens when you swallow a fish bone, but he thought I was ready. So I realized afterwards, though, looking at it, depends on what happens, is kind of how he saw life. He didn't worry about things. He wasn't bored. He was not afraid of things as far as I knew. And he said one time, he told us a story of, he had a dream he was being chased by a skunk. And he said, and then I just turned to myself in the dream and said, what are you running for? It's just a dream. And that was him, so practical, even asleep. He was as practical as could be. He also told me once his dreams sometimes had credits. And I believe it. He used to tell me he remembered being a baby. And you'd think, really, could you possibly? And he'd say, yeah, I crawled under a bed and I remember thinking, how am I gonna get out of here? And I thought, okay. So he had a great memory right up until the end. I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to find my spot again. I was gonna say, it was amazing to have him in your corner. And 2 distinct times in my life, I had the support from him that felt more than I deserved. When I got 105 on my anatomy final for massage school, mind you, not medical school, he actually, as soon as I told him, because I did the extra credit, which was the extra 5%, and he said, you could be a doctor. And I was like, hold on now. This was not even all the muscles. So thank you, but no. But when I was on the game show, The Chase, back in 2013, he and Mom were in the audience. And after we watch it, we get home, and every time anybody showed up at the house, he would make them watch it. And he would ask me every time, did you know that one? Did you know that one? Because it would be something somebody got wrong. But he sent me an email, and in it, he said that he was so proud of me, even though I didn't win. He told me that it was very hard. He'd watched a lot of episodes, and he knew that it was a very tough task to win that show, but that I was his hero for even trying. And that meant the world to me, to have my hero tell me I was his hero. And there were a lot of things we like to call Doylisms. And one of my favorites was how he would tell you every detail of a movie, and I'm not kidding. He would go into subtext, he would tell you the actors who played each character, he would tell you the red herrings, he would give you everything. And so on a car trip one time, he told me the movie Jackie Brown. By the way, I was surprised he saw it. It was a Quentin Tarantino movie, but he loved it. And he told me every detail and then stopped suddenly and said, I don't want to ruin the ending. And I went and watched it. All he left out was Jackie Brown walking down a hallway with a suitcase and the credits. That was it. So I don't know what he thought was the ending, but that wasn't the ending. That was just the last part of the movie. So years later, I watched it and I said to him, I felt like I'd seen it. And he said, oh, had you? And I said, no, you told me every detail of the movie on the drive to Palm Springs. And he said, oh, well, did you like it? And I said, yeah, I did. It was good. So I like to think of that as a Doyleism. There were a few others, like he would transpose letters of words, like grass pants. He called Sigourney Weaver Sigourney Weaver. Flaubeller was Bellflower, and he used to refer to William Shakespeare as Bill Wiggledagger. Shakespeare.
Wiggledagger.
And when I was, when I was about 22 and I was living in Santa Maria, California, we bonded over the book and then the movie of Shawshank Redemption. I read it and I knew he would love it. I knew he would see the beauty in that story. And so I said, Dad, read this book, go see the movie, tell me what you think. We spent the next 4 months, every few days, having hour-long conversations about every little nook and cranny of the book and the movie and how it made us feel and all of this, just absorbing life through the lens of this film. And I realized that that's how we communicated, my dad and I. We would watch a movie and we would see the humanity represented on the screen, or watch TV and see that, and we would just understand each other because it was like, you saw this, I saw this, we are the same. And we would, you know, before he passed, we would watch Ted Lasso, and we would see a moment where all of Sam's teammates helped him clean up his restaurant after it was vandalized, and I just looked over, and he had tears in his eyes, and he just looked at me and nodded. And I love that we didn't have to talk about things directly. We could talk about things in metaphors, and we understood each other's hearts. And we would travel to the symphony together, and the music that played as everybody entered was his favorite. And I tried to play it for him when he was passing, and I could tell he didn't want me to, and I realized after, he didn't want me to associate that music with his passing. And I appreciate that, because now I listen to it, and I picture the time that we saw that symphony, and we skipped through the parking lot singing the fourth movement together because we were so happy to have seen it. And that was my dad, right up until his 80s, skipping through a parking lot singing a symphony. And I loved him so much. There are no words to express, but I got to express it to him. Before he passed, I told him I was honored not just to be able to love my dad, but to get to like him too. And he said he felt the same way. And I mean, what more can you hope for? So thank you, every single person in this room, for knowing my dad, for seeing my dad, and for being here to support us in doing something I never wanted to do, which is say goodbye to him. But he's still here. And thank you so much.
Would you like to introduce your video?
Oh, thank you, Gene. And now, video and music slideshow of Doyle's life, put together by Ed Keller and a little bit of me, but mostly Ed. He thinks mostly me, but where do you want me to put the mic? Right there.
Trailer for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys a 8 by 12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means, by no means king of the road. Third boxcar, midnight train, destination Bangor, Maine. Oh, worn out suit and shoes. I don't pay no union dues. I smoke old stogies I have found, short but not too big around. I'm a man of means, by no means king of the road. I know every engineer on every train, all of the children and all of their names, and every handout in every town, and every lock that ain't locked when no one's around. I sing trailers for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys a 8 by 12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means, by no means king of the road. Trailers for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of pushing broom buys a 8 by 12 4-bedroom. I'm a man of means, by no means king of the road. Trailers for sale or rent, rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes, but
oh, there's a river that winds on forever. I'm gonna see where it leads. Oh, there's a mountain that no man has mounted. I'm gonna stand on a peak. Out there's a land that time don't command. Wanna be the first to arrive. No time for pondering why. I'm wondering on why we both still alive. To the ends of the earth, would you follow me? There's a world that was meant for us to see. To the ends of the earth, would you follow me? Well, if you won't, I will say my goodbyes to thee. Out there's a world that calls for me, girl, heading out into the unknown, with fear and strangers and all kinds of danger. Please don't say I'm going alone. To the ends of the earth, would you follow me? There's a world that was meant for us to see. To the ends of the earth, would you follow me? Well, if you won't, I will say by your mercy. For you, baby, doesn't mean I'm ready to stay. What good is living the life you've been given if all you do is stand in place? I'm on a river that winds on forever, follow till I get where I'm going. Maybe I'm heading to die, but I'm still gonna try. I guess I'm going home.
Want to say something?
I want to say that I only knew Doyle really for the last 8 years or so, but the last few days of digging through the slides, of seeing this really amazing, loving man and watching him for decades, loving and caring the people around him. You can see the love and adoration in his eyes when he has his beautiful wife on his arm, and the care for his daughters and everyone around him. When I finished putting that together, it was supposed to be 10 minutes, and I'm like, 10 minutes would be good. And when it was done, it was 16 and a half, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make those people sit through it. And I just want to thank the family for giving me the honor of being able to dig through those.
Well, thank you, Ed, and I'm sure we're happy that we had the chance to see those 16 and a half minutes, aren't we? You betcha. Well, there's other facets to this amazing man that we're celebrating here today. Next, we have a series of people wanting to say something about when he was a teacher right here at this school. And the first person to do that is a guy named Jerry Nicodeme.
My name is Jerry Nicodeme. I am not a public speaker, so please bear with me. I was a freshman in high school when I first met Mr. Cornwell. I remember drafting class where we learned mechanical architectural drawing. It was a fun class, and Mr. Cornwell was a great teacher. Freshman and sophomore years went smoothly. Junior year, not so well. Bit more mischievous, skipping classes more often. I had computer math with Mr. Cornwell. At the end of the year, my final report card had several NCs for grades. Some of my favorite teachers, Mr. Cornwell, Coach Mondale, PE, and I was on the wrestling team even. Should have been an easy A or B at least. I asked Mr. Cornwell why a NC. He tells me, you have to show up to class and make an effort. Needless to say, my senior year was a full schedule of classes. Had to pass those classes to get enough credits to graduate. I made sure to show up and make an effort. No NCs on final report card, and I graduated with my class. Mr. Cornwell was a great teacher, influencer, and friend. Thank you, Doyle, for everything.
Hi, I'm Mindy Secreta, Mindy Burl Secreta, a 1970 Phoenix High School graduate. Linda, Cassie, and Molly, I know you're heartbroken from the loss of your dad and your husband. But you know, our faith makes us confident with the knowledge that God is saying to Doyle, well done, good and faithful servant.
Amen.
Matthew 25:23. And we can all say, he fought the good fight, he has finished the race, and kept the faith. 2 Timothy 4:7. That's what each of us wants to be told after our life on this earth is finished, right?
Right.
Sometimes there's a person that comes into your life and forever changes it. And that's Doyle. In 1965, when Doyle began teaching at Phoenix High School, he and my older brother Mike became friends. I was in the 8th grade, and I first met him when he came to dinner at our home. When I was in high school, I took classes working in the office with Linda, and I soon became friends with her. I remember clearly when they got married and had the terrible car accident on their honeymoon. As we grew in friendship, I also babysat for Bob Peacock, my biology teacher, and I got to know Doyle and Linda even more because they were friends of the Peacocks. Bob and his family left for Oregon State University, where Bob was beginning a graduate program. Now, Doyle was a tried and true Beaver, and he saw something in me that I couldn't see and really encouraged me to think about going to OSU. He believed strongly that I should go, despite my parents thinking girls didn't need to go to college. I had 3 brothers that did. I hadn't even dreamed it was a possibility, but he planted the seed. When I was a junior in high school, Doyle and Linda planned a weekend trip to take me to Portland, where we stayed in a tall, towering hotel overlooking the city. I remember looking out the window and couldn't believe it. They had paid for me to have my own room. I had never done anything like that before, and it was the most exciting thing in my life. After our night in Portland, we drove south to Oregon State University to visit the Peacock family and have a tour of the campus, and I fell in love. If it weren't for Doyle and Linda, I'm sure I would not have attended college. I'm a 1974 Oregon State University graduate.
Yay.
And immediately upon my graduation, I was hired by Ed Murray here at Phoenix High School to begin a brand new child development program on this campus. I give Linda and Doyle my love and credit them always, my family, this is a story they all know, for taking me in and showing me a different way and helping me to dream big. I've never forgotten it in almost 60 years. And now it's our turn to celebrate Doyle's life by giving as he gave. We can pay it forward in remembrance of him. And by the way, happy birthday, Doyle, my friend. Go Beavs.
I can say that I'm a proud graduate of Phoenix High School, class of 1969, and it's my honor to be here today. Doyle was my math teacher as a freshman, and then as a junior. Well, to be brutally honest, I was not the best math student in the world. Man, I struggled mightily, and I barely passed. I mean, I found my grade cards a few weeks ago, and I thought, oh my God. Well, I don't recall Doyle ever being frustrated by my inability to understand mathematical concepts, such as the order of operations, and don't ask me about that today. He may have had bad days of frustration and conveyed his disappointment in the staff lounge, but we know what's said in the staff lounge usually stays in the staff lounge, except the smoke that would roll out the door when messages were delivered. I worked in the front office with Linda, so I know this firsthand, that Mrs. Schwallenberg and Mr. Zahn were prolific contributors. As a retired elementary and middle school teacher and librarian for 36 years, there were times that I was incredibly frustrated, and I questioned my own teaching abilities. And I'm sure that Doyle experienced the same thing. That's all part of being human, but he never showed or conveyed his frustration or disappointment. The American cartoonist Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert cartoon strip, once said, "You don't have to be a person of influence to be influential." In fact, the most influential people in my life are probably not even aware of the things they even taught me. That's how I reflect on Doyle's contribution to my life journey. As I get older, I often have moments of retrospection, and it makes me stand back and take a deep breath and think how amazing the experiences and the people that color and nurture my path through life. And even if that path takes you on a different trajectory that you may not understand, but in the end, all the life experiences and the people that walk in and out of your life contribute to your very soul. I remember we had a spring art show here at Phoenix High School, and how we prepared our work under the direction of Grace Fink, now Henson, who I talked to on Monday, who's at the ripe old age of 94, who sends her condolences, love to Linda, Cass, and Molly. I had created this piece of artwork. It was during the race to space, and we had space capsules going up, it seemed like every other week. But I had created this mosaic made out of bits of newspaper and colored magazines, and it was of the space capsule. And after the art show, Doyle came up to me and he asked, "Would you be willing to sell that?" And I said, why yes. I mean, I was just like aghast, that he would even recognize that that was worth something. And that was the moment that I really recognized the fact that Doyle's personality was such a giving and loving person to take notice of someone else's work. So as a side note, if you want to be like Doyle, buy lemonade from a kid on the corner, or buy those rocks that the kids paint. It might change their life forever. I'd like to tell you, recently, a young man from the UK that I had the pleasure of knowing was serving as a mission to seafarers in Seattle. And the mission of seafarers is a group of people that board ships that come into the port, and they minister to them. Anyway, he was recently ordained as a priest in the Anglican Church in the UK, and at his ordination, the priest delivered the following: "You will leave this place changed, changed in your deepest being. And the bishop will read you your impossible job description. It's impossible because you cannot do it on your own strength. You cannot bear this calling without the influences of other individuals and the grace and power of God. Doyle's life, in my life, epitomizes just that. He understood the importance of being truly human and reflecting God's compassion and love for all. He showed that it's important to be there for individuals and that sometimes they need a hand up as well as just to stand by them as a support. And I'm grateful and forever changed for that presence. Now I direct my thoughts directly to you, Linda, Molly, and Cass. Henri Nouwen, who's a great theologian, wrote the following about mourning. He says, you cannot talk or act your losses away, but you can shed tears over them and allow yourself to grieve deeply. The world says, just ignore it, be strong, don't cry, get over it, move on. But if you don't mourn, you can become bitter. All your grief can go right into your deepest self and sit there for the rest of your life. So don't ignore your grief or your tears. You know, we know that love is stronger than fear, life is stronger than death, hope stronger than despair. And we have to trust that the risk of loving is always worth taking, even if we mourn the loss of someone that we love and miss deeply. Love will always reach out toward the eternal. Love comes from the place within us where death cannot enter. Love does not accept the limits of hours, days, weeks, months, years, or centuries. Love is not willing to be imprisoned by time. I'm wishing you peace.
Now we have a few more speakers from the teaching realm of a period of time of teaching. The next one is named Lois Schibler.
It's interesting that so many of the thoughts that I have already been spoken. But I'll go ahead and share what I prepared. I'm Lois Koppel Scheibler, and my late husband, Larry Koppel, and I moved here in 1965 when Larry accepted a teaching position here at Phoenix. And Doyle moved here the same year, and they become fast friends, and part of that was because they were both Oregon State Beavers, so they connected with that really quickly. Doyle was single at the time, and our family enjoyed the time that he spent with us. And Linda was working, as you know, in the high school as the secretary, and they not soon, but at some time in the future, they began dating. Then they got married. So Doyle, Linda, and Larry and I found that we had some things in common. We had a lot of interests in commons, and one was taking trips to Reno. I've forgotten how many we took, but it didn't take much for the four of us to be on our way. One such trip was unplanned, and I'm sure, Linda, you'll remember this. One August, just before school started for the year, the four of us decided we'd go on a camping trip. So we went up to Three Creeks Lake, which is south of Sisters, and it was cold, and it was windy, and it was even more cold. And I don't know which one of us mentioned the word Reno, but we decided that it was probably warmer in Reno. So we immediately started taking camp down. We drove through the night to Ashland and then to Reno the next day. Do you remember that? I thought you would. As you know, Doyle could fix anything, and he was very generous with his time to help others. We had moved to Cresswell by then, and we were adding on to our house, and Doyle came up to help, and he provided his expertise in constructing that addition to our home. Doyle was my coach for raising a lemon tree that actually produces lemons. Doyle was a man of God, as we're hearing all through this. He was a faithful husband and father, a good and faithful friend. He was loyal and a man of integrity, and when something tickled his funny bone, he had an infectious laugh. Doyle, Linda, Cassie, and Molly are the types of friends you may not see very often, but they forever hold a special place in your heart. Well done, good and faithful servant, which we've heard several times here. We will all miss him.
They did not prepare the piano for us.
Okay.
So we were planning to have Everett Cade play a hymn that Dad wanted, but we apparently the message didn't get translated to the right person and we don't have a piano. So Everett is here as a guest. He's not going to play today, but we are going to play the song that he was going to play. So it's called Be Thou My Vision, and it was a request Dad had years and years ago that he wanted played here.
Next person on the list here is Joan Williamson from Mountain View Estates, where Doyle was heavily involved with a lot of people.
I have to say, before I begin my remarks, that Doyle was the definition of a fine gentleman. I'm 82 years old. I've met a lot of men. Nobody compares in that department. I moved to Mountain View Estates 10 years ago. And I remember a year or two later, I was in the office and Chris Hudson, who owns the property, told me, we're going to have a new property manager and his name is Doyle Cornwell and you're going to love him. I did. He was amazing. I could go on with all the things he did for so many of the people, but I'll give you one example. I had to kind of go through all of this in my mind. I had back surgery and it didn't go well, and I was told I wouldn't walk again. So for 9 months I was wheelchair bound, and they said, you need a ramp at your house. So I rented a ramp, and Doyle came over to fix something. I don't know if it was a light bulb or what it was. And I told him, I said, gosh, you know, that ramp costs $125 a month. $125 a month? Forget that. I could make one for you. And so he's out there measuring and doing all this stuff. And so I called up the company that put the ramp in, and they came to get it. And they took a look at what Doyle had done and said, "Who did this?" And I said, "Our property manager, Doyle Cornwell." "Well, you tell him he did a hell of a job." So I told Doyle, and he was like, "Cool, this is really cool." But it wasn't just the building of the ramp, it was the way that he cared about you. He cared about all of us. And I just learned this morning that when we had the fires, and my house fortunately survived, Doyle and Linda's did not, it burned to the ground, that he went around and made sure everybody got out okay and was the last one out. There's a resident named Tia Hatch, and we're really good friends. And she's unwell, unfortunately, otherwise she would be here today. But she said, "You be sure and tell them that he was Saint Doyle to me." And so a lot of us had that feeling about him. And there were people that he would help that couldn't afford to pay. Never bothered him, and sometimes he wouldn't want to take money, but I made sure every time I paid him, because he told me that it went into his Starbucks fund. So I thought, well, we got to help that Starbucks fund. But one of the things that I want to share is I was so very grateful that Cass and Molly told me that I could see Doyle when he was home. And he had told me in his last days, he had told me when he was diagnosed with leukemia. And he said, "The doctors tell me you won't die from this." Sadly, he did. But he told me, "I'm not worried. I know where I'm going. I don't have to worry about that." And I told him, one of the comments I made to him, as Linda and I stood next to him, I said, "Doyle, you've got an express pass at the pearly gates. You're not going to be held up in a line. You're going to go right on through." And I told him how much he meant to me and all the good things he's done. And at the end, I said, "Doyle, I'd like to ask you a favor." And he gave me the biggest frown. And I said, "Could you put a good word in for me when you get to the pearly gates?" And he winked at me because at that time he couldn't speak. And it was a profound pleasure and honor to call him my friend. And I love Linda and Cass and Molly. He talked about you so often and how much he loved you. And my favorite story, and I shared it with Linda, and she says, "He never told me that," is he told me that when he was teaching at Phoenix High School, after his divorce, he had his eye on Linda. And he said, "That's the one for me." And so he told me about when they got married, and the last week or two of his life, he talked about their anniversary coming up. I think it was in June, Linda, is that right? Anyway, I respected him so much for speaking about his emotions, about his family, and I adored him. He was the best.
So when Linda asked me last week if I wanted to speak up here, a little closer, that better? Naturally I was honored to be able to come up here and speak. Doyle and Linda were not just a brother and sister in Christ to me and my family, but very dear and close friends. And I have the utmost respect for Doyle and Linda. In fact, when my mom was at the end of her life, it was Doyle and Linda that helped me be able to keep my mom in home as long as I could. Doyle was someone I just looked up to and respected. He wasn't just smart, he was wise. Doyle had so much knowledge. I could call and ask him for any kind of advice, and he had it. Doyle was always patient. He was always kind. He was always understanding. Doyle was always helping someone. As my wife and I were talking about what to say, he has a servant's heart. as many of you have already explained. He was always giving of himself. Some memories that talk about, I've known Doyle since I was a young teenager. I lost my dad when I was 21, and Doyle was always there to help my family. He mentored us, my brothers and sisters as well, from a number of things, anything from building staircases to just showing up and helping out when, after the immediate fire, needed to build a fence in the back of the property of my mom's house, who lived down there in the same trailer park, and he showed up to help. The funny story about that is here's Doyle at 80 years old, and he's helping me dig the post holes. He's not even breaking sweat. And here I am needing water. So anyways, afterwards, we got the fence built and such. My eldest daughter, Lindsay, she was just impressed how well Doyle was doing. and when she found out that Doyle was 80 years old and hadn't even broken a sweat and was just digging in to help, what does my daughter say? Doyle is a stud. So one of the fond memories. Doyle just, he was there for you, always there for you. And one of my earlier fonder memories too was one time at church, he talked about an earworm. And if some of you don't know what an earworm is, it's you get that music playing in your head, but it's the last tune on the radio, and you can't get it out of your head. And the way you get it out of your head is you have to think of a different song. You think of a different song, that will break the earworm. Well, so as interesting that was, I never heard what an earworm was. So that following week, I went to work and I had a meeting with my supervisor, and I told him about an earworm. He thought that was really interesting. And we got talking about different songs and such. And for those of you that remember The Muppet Show, there was a musical piece called Na Na Na. And you know where I'm going with this. So anyways, got talking about that. Well, I work graveyard, and about 1:30 in the morning, I get a text from my supervisor, Tom at the time, and said that he couldn't sleep and it was my fault. And I said, why? And he said he can't get Na 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 out of his head. So those were just some of the memories I had of Doyle. He was just full of knowledge and a mentor and a great example of how we should always be, always giving a hand to others. He was always there for us. And I just will really miss Doyle really well. Thank you.
Suzanne Rushing, I think is the name, and this is from Strellman's, the history of Strellman's, making jewelry and doing all kinds of things, traveling around the world on behalf of Strellman's. So here she comes, Suzanne Rushing.
Hello. I had the pleasure of meeting Doyle in 1990 when my husband and I came to the Valley. We were taking job interviews with the hopes of moving here. I have to say that our time was running out and our interviews were running out, and the prospects were looking rather slim. But at the end of our stay, things changed. At my last interview, the man that was interviewing me handed me a piece of paper, and he said to me, I think this is somebody you should meet. And on that piece of paper was Doyle's name and the address of Strellman's Fine Jewelry Manufacturing. Well, I wasted no time, and 30 minutes later, I was seated in Doyle's office. Doyle was very friendly, very polite, and very honest when he told me Strellman's at this time really did not have an opening for another bench jeweler. But the interview was not going to be like all the other interviews I had just had, because Doyle was open-minded and had a willingness to ask and listen. And he did actually offer me a position at the end of that interview. I had the pleasure of working under him for the next 4.5 years. He was a great manager, and his style made it a very conducive working environment. He was a very good listener, very calm. I never saw him rattled, unnerved, or ever raised his voice. He treated everyone respectfully and everybody with fairness. Even with seasonal workloads and the stress that came with those times, he managed to supervise our shop, anywhere from 11 to 15 people, and created a successful team. Problems were not problems, they were opportunities to fine-tune, make things better and more efficient. And even though it was production, you always knew that you had the opportunity to learn and expand your skills, but he always made sure that it never compromised the quality of the product or the wellness of the company. He always greeted you with an upbeat smile, and I saw he truly cared for his employees. And just one instance was when they went to flexible work hours, which was definitely not management's a plus for management, but for all the people who worked there. He was always professional, but able to combine it with being human and approachable. Doyle was very instrumental in providing an opportunity to make me change my life. And at the same time, others around him and his community. I know that I probably represent hundreds of people in this valley who had been touched by Doyle in such ways. After I left Stroman and over the years, our paths would still cross. Taking care of his neighbors, and probably some of them are here. He would bring ladies into the jewelry store in the jewelry store that I had, to have their jewelry mended, inspected, and maintained. And he would always patiently just wait along the side. And when we were done with business, we would have the opportunity to get caught up on life. And he too would come in and give me tips on growing my little Meyer lemon tree, which is not up to Doyle's, what his tree was, but I'm working hard on it. And no matter what time lapses were between these visits, it always seemed like whenever you met Doyle, the last time you saw him was just yesterday. I'm happy to have known him. He greatly impacted my life, and I know he will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Well, that was great. Thank you for sharing. We've come to the end of the list of names on the program, but that doesn't mean we've come to the list of opportunities, unless you tell me I have, for others to give one, maybe two. I could bring the mic to you. That would make it easier. Raise your hand if you want to say a word or two, okay? Okay, here comes somebody.
Hi, my name is Randy Cornwell. My middle name is Doyle, just like Doyle. That's his middle name too. Many people don't know Doyle's real name is Jesse. So he told me the story about this growing up, that his parents had an argument about what to call him, and between Jess or Jesse, and they couldn't decide. So Doyle decided to finally go by his middle name. So anyway, Doyle was 10 out of 12 kids. My dad was number 11, so they were very close, and that's why my dad named him after him. So very proud that Doyle is my uncle. Anyway, like that.
Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, I'll fly away. Yeah, when I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
I think that's it then, huh? Okie dokie, there's the food over there, and have a great time visiting. Thank you. You have any last words you want to say? Okay, you're free to go. Do whatever, flying around. Okay.
Thank you, Gene.
Sandwich bar. Grilled chicken. Pulled pork. Roast beef. Sauces on the side. Rice or regular gluten-free bread options available. On the side, fruit, carrots, macaroni, salad, green salad, and a selection of dressings. Some of Doyle's favorite sweets, Jordan almonds, Snickers bars, carrot cake. Oh my goodness. You don't want to miss that. We better not fly away out the door. Okay.